How's everybody doing? Good. Doing all right? I'm going to do it one more time. How's everybody doing? Good. All right, so I don't know if you know Lamar Vest, but I know who Lamar Vest is. And so for me to pinch hit for Lamar Vest is like you came to a 5-star dining restaurant and they told you they have the best filet mignon in town, right? And so you get up and you say, hey, I want the filet. I'd like it medium because that's the only good way to eat a steak. And they come to your table and they put in front of you a hot dog. Well, that's me. I'm the hot dog tonight, all right? So here's what we want to do. If you've got questions tonight while I'm sharing, while Dad is sharing, while Dr. Cutshaw is sharing, you can use this number that's on the screen. Text that number. You can text those questions, and we'll try our best to answer those questions the best that we can. But tonight, I want to talk about church planting. But before I do, what I would like to know is kind of who's in the room, okay? So if you would say, I am a lead pastor, I'm a senior pastor, lead pastor, whatever that looks like at your church, if that's you, raise your hand. All right? You can put those down. If you would say, I am a staff pastor, staff person that leads ministry at my church. I may get paid for it, or I may be storing up to get paid really well in heaven because they can't pay me here, but I am a staff pastor type of person in my church. Raise your hand. All right? All right, good stuff. Now, if you would say, whether I've already raised my hand or not, I am currently or at some point in the future, I may be a church planter. All right, so I have planted a church previous to now, or at some point in the future, I may be either the lead pastor or a staff person, a ministry leader at some type of church plant new work. Raise your hand. All right, good stuff. We got several folks there. And then if you tonight are one of those folks that you would just mark other. I'm just other. I'm something that you haven't mentioned yet. Just lift your hand right where you're at. Thank you so much. God bless you guys. Appreciate you sharing your otherness. Let me share a couple things about me. I appreciate Brother Moody allowing me to be here tonight. Like he said, I lead our Canton campus. We call it Canton Church of Mount Paran North. We launched, January will be 5 years ago. So in the month of October, we celebrated that 5 years ago in 2011. We actually held our very first, what we called preview service. For us, we were going to launch in a high school. And so before we showed up on the very first Sunday to hold church in a high school, we decided we wanted to know how to have church in a high school because none of us had ever done that before. And so we showed up at that church, or that school, that we were turning into a church on Sunday mornings and loaded in our equipment and held service in the month of October. So this is a big month for us because it really does represent the 5-year anniversary of the ministry that started in Canton, Georgia for us. And then we held another one in November. We held another one in December. And then January the 8th, 2012, we hosted our first public worship service there in Canton in Sequoia High School. I've got a picture of that right there. You can see a little bit of that. The reason that we're not showing the crowd is because there were very few people there. And we didn't want you to see that there's no one really there. There's about as many people in the seats as there are on stage. And we're so thankful for all those band members that came and faithfully served that morning. So we held that service January the 8th. And we met for 209 Sundays in that high school. And I can tell you it's 209 Sundays because I got a little bit of a glimpse of what hell will be like. And that's having church in a high school. I kid. No, it was an incredible season of time for us where 209 Sundays in a row, we came and we loaded our equipment into this high school and we had church. And then we tore down all the equipment we had set up and put it back in the trucks that we had. And we went and stored it in a warehouse until the next Sunday. And we did portable church for 209 Sundays. And again, I can tell you it was 209 because I was keeping count. And so in January of this year, we moved into a permanent leased space. There's a picture of that space that we opened in January. We now have 3 services every Sunday in this space here. And what you can't see right there, and I should have shown this picture, right on the front of our stage. We have a stage similar frontage-wise to this right here. Right on the front of our stage, there are 209 rocks, 209 stones that line the front of the stage that we use as the altar of remembrance for the 209 Sundays of what God did every single Sunday we were in that high school. Because the last Sunday we were at the school, I preached about, the children of Israel and how they would build these altars of remembrance of what God had done so that they could come back at a later time and tell their children and their grandchildren, this is what God did in this place, and this is what the name of this place is called, and this is what it means to us. Well, we knew that there were people that would come to us that would never experience that season of portable ministry. And we wanted to have that altar of remembrance for them to say, what do those rocks represent? What does this look like in the church? And we said, hey, there were some things that God did for us in 209 Sundays in a high school that you never experienced, but it taught us so much about God, His power, and His love for us that helped shape who we are today. There's so much about what we do in ministry now at Canton Church that really was formed in that season in the high school. So tonight I want to talk about church planting, and I want to do so even if you're not a church planter. I really believe that this is applicable to every single person in ministry in any form or fashion. Because there's principles that I think in church planting, if we can kind of find the value in it, it's transferable to industry context. And so I believe, in church right now, maybe over the last decade or so, there has been this conversation about the need to plant new churches. The statistics are overwhelming sometimes about the number of churches that are closing down, and the number of pastors leaving the ministry. And so, people talk about all the time that we have to plant new churches to help outpace the number of churches that are dying. But then we talk about this church revitalization conversation. Church revitalization is a really fancy word. My grandfather would call it a $2 word. That just really helps us to understand that there are some churches that may need new life breathed into them. And so I think a lot of people got into the conversation, should we invest our resources into church planting, or should we invest our resources into church revitalization? And I think the answer is yes. We should do both. We should breathe new life into existing churches, and we should also look to grow new churches where there were not churches there before. And so tonight, in the time that I have, I just want to share with you a few of the principles that we've learned along the way in church planting that I believe are applicable to you if you feel like, hey, at some point in my life, I may plant a church, or I'm a part of a new work, or if I'm a part of a church that just may need some new life breathed into it, and maybe this principle or some of these principles are transferable for us tonight. So the mission of God that I think we can all probably point to, it's found in a couple places in the New Testament specifically. It's called the Great Commission. The Matthew chapter 28 version of the Great Commission is probably the most famous of those. And verses 19 and the first part of 20 is where I want to start tonight. It says this, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. So this is the Great Commission. And for us as ministry leaders, as church leaders, it is the mission of the church. It is the mission of Christ followers to go and to make disciples. Now I love, and I've preached this a lot, I love the very first two words of this passage. Therefore go. Therefore, in response to something else that already happened, you are supposed to do something else. Therefore, Jesus is saying, in response to the time of ministry that you have observed in me, now you are called to do something with what you've seen and heard. Therefore, in response to what you've seen and heard, go and do something. Go, action. It is not something where you sit still. You have to get up to go do something. So in response to what you've seen and heard, go and do something. And I think for all of us, as a part of the church, as a part of the body of Christ, we understand this mission. We understand the mission that we've been called to do, but it's a difficult thing to do, to go and make disciples. This is not a one-time prayer that is prayed. It is an ongoing process of discipleship where we invest in the lives of other people, go and make disciples, and teach them to obey. We're helping them to understand what God has commanded through Jesus Christ to those disciples and then to us, and what they should do in following after Jesus Christ. So this is the mission of the church. So we are to go. And when we go to plant new churches, when we go to launch new churches, when we go to revitalize churches that are in existence but they need some new life breathed into them, tonight I want to talk about a few things that I believe we are to do as we go to make disciples in new places. All right? We're going to go and make disciples. Here's the first thing that I think is really important for all of us. Get connected. Get connected. Here's what I know. I know that you could get up tonight, walk out of here totally inspired by everything that I'm saying. You could walk into town and you could decide, hey, I'm going to plant a church. Or you could go to a new town, I'm going to plant a church. But what I would say to you right up front is that you do not want to do that alone. Right? Because we don't want to live and do ministry in isolation. Ministry in and of itself can be isolating. It can be lonely. And so what we want to do is that as we are going to do the mission of God, as we are going to plant churches, as we are going to minister to the people of our communities, we want to stay connected to other people who are doing ministry. And so here's what I mean by that. If you're going to plant a church, if you're not currently you're planting a church, but you're going to do that, what I would say to you is to find a covering. We're a part of an covenant through the Church of God. There are other organizations that you can partner with, even under the umbrella of the Church of God, to help you to plant. But what it does is it provides accountability and covering. It also helps to have a sharing process over you, and it gives you peers in ministry that you can join alongside and co-labor with them, so that you don't ever have to feel like you are doing ministry by yourself. So I would say that we need to get connected, finding a planting organization. Now, in our what we've done just north of Atlanta is that we have this mothering church. We have this launching, sending church. So here north sent us into a new community that was about 20 minutes, 25 minutes away from where they're at, and they launched us into that community. They said, hey, Pastor Mark said, hey, in my part of a new group of people that probably won't drive to an area. It's not that far, 20 minutes or so, but they're probably not driving down there. It's a booming area. It's a new community where commerce is happening. Young families are driving, are there. Schools are being built. Business is growing there. Lots of young families and a humongous number of unchurched people. Now, we live just outside Atlanta, and that's kind of in some form or fashion maybe the buckle of the Bible Belt, or maybe it's around the buckle, or at least it's right near the front of the buckle. It's somewhere there where everybody that you know knows about Jesus. Right? And that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but what we do understand is a Christian context that exists in our community. And yet, when we started looking at the various communities with about 20-25 minutes of Mountain North, what we found in Cherokee County, Georgia, which is just north of Cobb County, Georgia, which is one of the largest communities in the Georgia and southeastern United States, is that there were 85,000 unchurched people that live within 7 miles of the high school that we are. We could meet in that school, and within a 7-mile drive from that high school, there were 85,000 unchurched people. We didn't even have to worry about trying to compete with other churches. We just had to compete with them for 85,000 people that were not connected to a church. In the larger Cherokee County area, or if you expanded it from 7 miles to 15 miles, there were 160,000 people that were unchurched in Cherokee County, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, that were not a part of any kind of gathering of believers in Jesus Christ. And so what we decided is we wanted to go to that place, but we did it with the covering. We did it with a connection to another ministry place, Mount Perry North, where we weren't doing it alone. And so I would encourage you, if we're planting a church, maybe ministry not in a church, I would encourage you to make sure that you are connected to other people doing ministry. Pick up the phone and call the other pastor in your town. Maybe he's not Church of God. Maybe he's a Baptist brother. Maybe she's involved in a different denomination or parachurch organization. Get connected to somebody else that's doing the mission of God, so that when you're weak, they should be strong. And when they're weak, you can be strong, because together we're all the same. The first thing you have to do is connect. The second thing you have to do, I would call it learning language. I would call it learning language. And here's what I mean. If tonight you weren't going to go plant a church, but you felt like God was calling you tonight to move to a foreign country and to become a missionary, you're going to go to Russia, you're going to go to China, you're going to go somewhere in South or Central America, you don't speak that language naturally, you've never learned that language, what would you do to go and do ministry in that context? You would educate yourself about that place of ministry. You would learn the language that's different than your own. You also, even if it's not a language barrier, you would also try to find out as much as you could about the community there, about the cities that were there, the people that lived there. What kind of jobs did they have? What kind of education did they have? How much money did they make? What were the strains on marriages? What were the strains on family? What was the education level of the children in that community? Because you would want to go in and do ministry in a way that was relevant to the people of that community. And so if I'm going to go and plant a church, I don't have to view it anything different than what I would be a missionary, because instead of going to Central or South America or to Russia or to China, I'm going to a missionary in Cherokee County, Georgia. 85,000 church people in Sequoia High School. I am a missionary to that community. I've got to learn language. I educate myself. I use resources that are available to me, those that are free and those that are paid. And I teach myself, what is the commerce that exists in our community? What are the jobs? What are the things that people are doing for leisure activity? Maybe that goes hand in hand with what the church can provide to help bring them into a context where the gospel of Jesus Christ can be presented. And then I want to find out what are some of the felt needs that they have, so that I can help wrap the message of Jesus Christ into a solution for the problems that they have in their lives, or into the answer for the questions that they're already asking. I can't say, well, I'm going to go and just preach the gospel. I think that's what we're doing, but we're also preaching the gospel in ways that they open up themselves to the gospel, because we're giving a cup of water, right? We're giving a coat to those that are cold. We're finding a way to present the gospel to them in relevant ways. The third thing that I would say, other than connected, other than learning the language, is marry your mission and date your model. Marry your mission and date your model. Now, here's what about that. We all agreed early on. I saw you nodding your head. If you did nod your head, then you were wrong. But we all agreed that the mission of Matthew 28:19, the commission, was that we were to go into all the world and make disciples. That's the mission. That's the one component that is unchanging. We also, and because we're Pentecostal, that we believe in the power of God and the power of the Spirit of God to work in and through us. That's our mission. But the way that that is accomplished, the model in which we do ministry, can vary from church, from town to town, from pastor to pastor, from leader to leader. Why? Because God has equipped you to do some things and to reach people that I'll never reach. And He's equipped you to do things in ministry that I'm not equipped to do. I'm not gifted in the way that you're gifted. And so God has equipped you with a message, called you with the mission, and He's also given you specific giftings to allow you to operate in a model that may be different than my ministry model. It may not be what works in my town. Here's the problem, and we all know this. I'll say that I'm guilty of it because nobody else very much sure is. I see other models that are working in other places, and I take them and I go, I want to do that in my church. Problem is, that model works in that community because it reaches the people of that community. Those people don't live in my community. Now, there may be things that I can take and I can pull into my context, and I can tweak them, and I can adapt them to my things and the personality of our ministry team and the people that God has surrounded us with to do ministry. But the model is not the non-negotiable. The mission is the non-negotiable. The model is very much negotiable. I heard it done this time, that if you have both of your hands outstretched, you have to choose one to close your fist around. What would you put in that fist? I would put very few things, actually. That Jesus Christ was the Son of God. He came to come from the Father to live a sinless life on the earth. He went to the cross. He died for my salvation. He ascended back to the Father, left us the Holy Spirit so that the power of God could live in and work through us. And that's about it. All of the other things that we sometimes close our fist around, other people at some point in history, or maybe even in present day, don't feel they're non-negotiables. But for us, they are. They're our model. They're the way we do ministry. And here's how we challenge it. Here's to come in tonight. If I could say, well, this idea, here's what I would say. Maybe the healthiest thing that you could do in your church would be the same kind of conversation you would have if you were playing a church and everything was starting with a blank piece of paper. What does our ministry model look like if we only have a handful of negotiables? If we only have 2 or 3 or 5 things that are absolutely non-negotiables, what model looks like? Here's what I think is a healthy thing to evaluate a model. To evaluate the way you do ministry. Every 3 months, every 6 months, every year in a staff meeting, ministry meeting of some kind, every single week we're debriefing everything that we've been doing. It makes sense. They don't make sense anymore. And there used to be some things that help draw people into being receptive to the gospel, and it doesn't draw people in anymore. And so if we're married to our model, we can't change it. But if we're married to our mission and we only date our model, then it could be that we're open to tweaking and changing the ways that we do ministry to help us fulfill the mission. Now, if you are planting a church, I'll say this to you. Don't start with what you're going to do or how you're going to do it. Start with why. Start why, then you can always change the what and the how. If you start with what, it's harder to change that. If you start with how, it's harder to change that. But if you say, here's why we're doing what we're going to Canton, Georgia, because there are 85,000 within 7 miles of high school. I not trying to go and do church to reach me. I've already been found. I do church to reach them. So what does it need to look like in this season to help reach those people? Because it's why we're doing what we're doing. If you're going into a town to plant church, I would be very careful marking yourself as the alternative to other houses in town. Because it's not kingdom-mindedness. If you walk into town, you start handing out invite cards that says, we're going to do church better than it's been done. We're going to do church different than it's been done. What you're doing is you're pitting one brother against another, one sister against another, and that's not what we've been called to do. We've been called to go and make disciples. And the things that you're offering as the alternative will one day be the tradition that someone else is providing an alternative to. Start with why, not what and how. The other thing I say about this, open to all of the negotiable. I told you we did 209 Sundays in high school. That's not where we thought we were going to start. We were starting in a church building. It was an abandoned church building that we originally thought we were going to move into. The problem of financing some of the costs that it would have taken to renovate that church building, and so we started looking for other options, and then we found some lease space, but we didn't know if we wanted to get into long-term lease. We really knew what congregation we were even having in this early season of our church. And so the flexibility that was provided us going into a high school was something that we were not open to, but eventually became open to. 200 Sundays later, we moved into a more permanent space. And I promise you that the DNA of our church, the DNA of what we do every single week was formed in those 209 Sundays in that high school. When our people developed this mantra, we'll do whatever it takes. We showed up on Sundays, and I kid you not, there was no power in the school. We're still church. We showed up Sundays, and there was no water. We're back in the middle of the summer. We showed up one Sunday, there was no heat in the kids' classroom. You know what our people did? They just walked in and said, you know what? Here's how we've always done it, but we're not married to that, so we're just going to take the kids' classroom, we're going to move it into a room. You know what we're going to do? We're not married to certain things, so we're just going to go 2 miles away to where some friends of ours have a generator. We're going to go and fill up trash with water and come and dump them in the toilet so that there's water for people to use specific. Our people develop this mantra that says, whatever it takes for us to do ministry, we're not married to what happens, we're not married to happens, we're here to do why. So I would encourage you to be open to the way that God uses you. The 4th thing is this: you got to get connected, you got to learn the language, you got to marry your mission and date your model. Be a citizen. So that I don't mean this like you need to drive and you need to drive the speed limit, you need to vote. I'm talking about the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God kind of citizen. I said this a minute ago when I was talking about how we position ourselves against the other church in our town. We speak to church planners or potential church planners first, and then I'll talk to us. But I think that we all, as the body of Christ, especially those who may be starting a new work for the community, need to be aware of what God was already doing in a town before we showed up. Because here's the deal. For most of us, unless you're citizen number 1 in a brand new town that was just created, somebody lived there before us. Somebody did ministry there before us. And I don't know that the most God-honoring thing that you could do when you walk into a new town is figure out who the other pastors in town are. And invite them to go to lunch. Ask them of that community is. Ask them when revival has broken out in that community and when it stopped and why it stopped. Ask them when the greatest success of the church of that community took place in the history of this community, this town. And find out so that you from day one position yourself as a partner in ministry rather than someone who is trying to compete with them. Trevor's here, our staff. He can tell you in front of him that I have accountability. From our stage, we pray for other churches in our town. We'll pray when they're long in church. We'll pray that the week before Easter, we pray for a number of churches in our community that Easter Sunday would see a brand new record number of operations of those churches across the country. They're on our team. They're part of the same family. And so I want to see interesting. The month of October is usually known as Pastor Appreciation Month. If you're a staff member here today, you know that. There's not one day left on Pastor. Maybe you buy his dinner on the way home. Gift cards, you've been holding all along, but you didn't want to run out. But here's what my church does. Writes a handwritten note. Takes a $5 gift card. Get a book that he buys on Amazon, lots of dozens of them, and he sends them to pastors in his community. Of churches that may be a little bit smaller than his, churches that are larger than his, and he just wants you to know that we're on the same team. And as much as it depends on me, I'm ready for you. I'm here for you. We are on the same team. You need to be a good citizen of the kingdom of God. They are not our enemies. They are not some we're competing against, and some of them were here long before you ever got here, and some of them will be here long after you decide to move on somewhere else. Be a good citizen of the kingdom of God. The next thing I would say is this: invest in people. Invest in people. This is transferable to any type of ministry context. Invest in people. But I can say that the most fulfilling thing for me so far in the nearly 5 years we've done ministry in Canton, Georgia, is people. We start every staff meeting, and we start every volunteer huddle. We huddle together with the volunteer team, our guest service team, our children's ministry team, our band and media team. Before every service, they gather together in a volunteer huddle, and we talk to them about a couple of things. Hey, special happenings that they want you to know about. Here's some information you need to know. But we start every huddle the same way we start every staff meeting, with wins. We celebrate wins. And for us, a win is not a number. A win is a name and story. Numbers tell part of the story, numbers don't all the story. So what we do is we start volunteer huddles with a win, because here's what we need to know, and I'll reference this in a minute. Not everybody that's serving your church knows what's happening in your church. You're serving back in the nursery, and they don't see brother up. It's hard to just last day. They only heard screaming babies for 75 minutes. Maybe 90 if you got really annoyed and you weren't thinking about the nursery. You were just thinking about how you're preaching. So somebody needs to let them know that what they're doing matters. So we start with this. And this will help us to remember that we are called to invest in people. The Great Commission did not say, therefore go and grow big churches. Though I think that's a byproduct, we're actually called to go and make disciples. Invest in the lives of people. Don't get in a mess. Don't help them when things are bad, and go and celebrate with them when things are good. Rejoice with those and mourn with them. Be there for them and invest in them. Celebrate the things that they're doing. And make sure, and again, this is something we volunteer all the time. We want something for you more than we want something from you. In our churches, we can look at volunteers and we can look at people and we say, man, I love you, I appreciate you, but all they ever hear say is, can you come and serve in the nursery? Can you come and serve the youth chaperone? Can you come strip? Can you come play the drums? Can you come sing the choir? We don't have enough to do. Can you come help cut the guy on Friday, Saturday? Can you come do this? And the only time we ever text, the only time we ever call, the only time we talk to them is when we need something from them. But how often do we just stop what we're doing in the busyness of our lives, in the busy ministry, so that they know we want something just from them? We want something for them. And so we ask the Lord, this all the time. I put notes in my phone after a Sunday when somebody's, hey, I got a test coming up on Tuesday, doctor. I don't know about you, but on Sundays, I'm about good for nothing mentally. But I ask the Lord to help me every single Sunday. Lord, help me remember the things that people are saying. And the Lord does that through this technology. What happens is as soon as they walk away, I go, text on test. We've got a guy who works in our parking lot, and anytime he parks the first test, he got his phone, and he says, blue car. And after church, this guy's one starts getting the car, and Chris says, John, thanks for coming today. Really appreciate you coming. Hope back next week. Invest in the lives of people so that they know you care for them. You don't just want something from them. The next thing I think is really important, get connected, not just learn the language, not just marry a mission, not just be a good citizen, not just people. You can't lead people from afar. You have to where you're going. When I was 17 years old, I was going to the senior prom at my high school. I had asked a really lovely young lady to go with me, and I bought tickets. At our school, you had to take tickets on, and we were going to go and meet our friends. Really nice place. We would all get a picture made. We would get into the limo and all pitched in the taxi there down to the prom. Here's the problem. We got there to take the pictures, and I realized I left the tickets at my house. Well, they had already said, you can't get in unless you have your tickets. So I, for the first time in my life, admitted to a woman that I was an idiot. Went up to my date. Said, I'm so sorry, but I left the tickets at my house. We're not going to be able to ride in the limo with all of our friends. We're going to have to drive in my fourth Explorer, go back to my house, and get the tickets and meet everyone at the prom. She said, fine. That's fine. So we get in the car, just threw out it. We get in the car, we drive to my house, we get the tickets for the prom, and we leave my house. And not an unusual occurrence, my car was almost out of gas. We didn't run out of gas. I know some think that's where the story is going. No, the Lord was gracious and granted me extra miles per gallon to get to the gas station, so that would not kill me that night. So we stopped for gas on the way to the prom, and I get out, and I'm standing there pumping gas in a tuxedo, wearing a cummerbund. I don't know why you wear cummerbunds. Can't really figure it out. But I was wearing a cummerbund as I pumped gas. Anybody ever worn a cummerbund gas? Oh, you admit that? I admit that tonight. God bless you. So, I'm wearing a cummerbund in a tuxedo, pumping gas. Now, here's the punchline of the story. If somebody were to drive by, they'd be, man, that guy is overdressed to be pumping gas. Because they didn't see where I'm at. But I was perfectly dressed for where I was going. When I showed up to the prom, nobody second guessed why I was wearing a tuxedo. Nobody would have a problem. Well, maybe people would have a problem with me wearing a cummerbund. I don't know. But nobody's going to question that when I show up where I'm going. But in the process, I might seem a little overdressed. Here's what I would say to all of us, church ministry leaders in the room, you can't just be dressed or where you are. You have to be also dressed for where you're going. So one time you just sat down and said, you know, there's 50 people in our church right now. But what would we have to do to accommodate if 100 people showed up Sunday? Where are the holes in our systems? Do we have enough people greeting at the door? Do we have enough parking spots? Do we have enough offering baskets? Do we have enough chairs set out? And I realize there's a tension here. This is not a problem to be dealt with. This is a tension to be managed. That place you find yourself in fact and faith, where you try to say, okay, what is the present reality? What amount of faith do we need to step out and put a few extra chairs out today? Not just people that may show up, but also to cast vision to the current 50 that this is not all there is. One day there are new people coming in to fill these chairs. Making sure that they know that we are prepared where we're headed and not just comfortable where we're at. You have to lead such a way to know where you're going. When we were a brand new church plant, brand new, we did so many things that people look at, that doesn't make any sense while you're doing it. You got things that you need. We moved into our building just recently. This is not brand new. We moved into our building back in January. We ordered 300 first-time guest gifts. We had 300 guests on a weekend, ever. We ordered 300 first-time guest gifts. Somebody was like, why didn't you order like 100? It's a lot cheaper to do that. But what we wanted to do is make sure that we had enough for what we could send. We want to always be evaluating where we at. We just that as we put our staff. We say, hey, here's how many people are currently attending our church. But if we reach this next growth barrier, this next lid, what's going to take to just bounce that lid off and make that next jump? The things that we need to evaluate. We came up with a list of 25 things that we need right now. If that many people showed up, we're not ready for it. And we also evaluated the question that if they didn't just show up only one Sunday, but if we became a church that size on a regular basis, what would we have to do? So I would say you can't just leave where you're at. You always need to envision where God may be sending you. I would say this to you as a church, to our church planter tonight, that there's a lot of models out there, there's a lot of organizations that give you a lot of things and try help you and encourage in a lot of ways. One of the reasons that ARC, which is the Association of Related Churches, one of the reasons that they encourage you to have big launch weekends. Some churches launch with 500, 600, 700 people. I coach pastors and I coached a guy in his last semester of coaching, and he has been in existence for 2 years. He launched in September 2014, and in August he averaged 1,100 people on Sunday. You go, oh my gosh, how in the world? But on launch Sunday, they had 600. They spent a year in preparation of launch day, because what ARC tries to get you to do is to launch beyond the first several growth barriers. You know, to get beyond 75 and 150 and 300 and even 500 if possible, because they know when you may have 600, but in week 2 you may have about 310. They know that when you have 160 on week 2, you may have 78. This is the natural attrition that shows those kinds of things. What I'm encouraging you is to constantly evaluate where you're trying to figure out what is the next barrier that we want to cross over. Just bump up against 100. Just keep bumping up against 60. We just keep bumping up against 160. Where are the flaws in our current models, our current systems, the current way we do things that are probably prohibiting more people from showing up to church on a regular basis? The second to last one is this. I believe it is God, as a pastor of our church, to connect the dots. I referenced it just a few minutes ago, but I believe that one of the principles that we in ministry are called to do is to connect the dots. I talked earlier about the volleyball and the staff meeting where we celebrate wins. I believe it is my job to help people know that what they're doing matters. And so every single Sunday for 209 Sundays that we met in high school, if I was there, I wasn't on vacation, I stood in the middle of a circle of every single person that would serve that day. And I would tell a story from a previous Sunday. I talked about somebody that gave heart to the Lord. I talked about those 85,000 unchurched people within 7 miles of high school that showed up 2 weeks ago and came last Sunday. Then I'd say, Chris, they showed up and God did something in their heart. You showed up early and set up my journey to the class. I'd walk up to the next person and I'd say, sure, they showed up 2 weeks in a row, but you showed up early and you plugged the soundboard into a soundboard. Even though you don't have any musical ability at all, I want to be a part of leading worship. Make sure when they get in the room they can hear what the worship band is singing. Praise God. I was connecting the dots. I was connecting to what God did. And I, as a ministry, as a pastor, church manager, as a children's pastor, youth pastor, as a volunteer, as an usher, as a greeter, one of the best things that you could do in your church is help connect the dots with what the people in your church are doing. And how that helping God do what He is doing. God doesn't need help. No, He doesn't. You're exactly right. God doesn't need our help. And yet, time and time again, He chose to involve names in the work that He was accomplishing to meet the needs of people. 5,000 people. The preacher was long. What are you going to do? Jesus, what are you going to do? How are you going to feel? He says, well, what do you have? Now, I don't have anything. I mean, we're working through Saturday. I coach my kid takes me on Saturday, and I'm going to come to church. Yeah, I don't have anything. You show up at 7 a.m. and help us load into a high school. You could? Why don't you give out that? Well, I mean, I can't sing. I don't have any ability, musical ability. I can't preach. I'm not talented. Well, what do you love? Love kids. Hope to be a dad one day. You should just be in the room. Some weeks there may not even be a baby that shows up. Some weeks there you just be volunteer in that room and share their moms and dads that experience the power of God, experience adults. And as much as you can, just pray for that child, sing worship songs for that child. When they're a little older, help them color a picture of Jonah that's going to be outside my mind. But coloring it, it's all one color. It doesn't make sense what they're doing. You just tell them, God gave Jonah a second chance. As you get older, He's going to give you a second chance too. Third, fourth. Well, that's all. Because God wants to do something we connected dots. If you're a stranger, I would say this early on, it may be really, really hard to find stories to tell. You got to scratch. I mean, you can look for anything you can share. Find a story, sell that story. But you can connect the dots to what God is doing of your church. Last one is model. Model. What God is doing in our church, in the way that God is calling us to reach people. This challenge all of us, church in general. You are telling your people from the stage that they really, really, really need the life group. You're not in the group. You need to quit telling that. If you're standing up here to take up the offer, tell them they need to stop. If you're standing in a small group of junior high students, and you're talking to them about staying pure, you're going to ask somebody else to lead that small group. Here's what I believe. I believe about churches. It's not about pastoring churches. It's not about leading churches. It's not about leading ministries. It's about following Jesus Christ with all of our heart. Asking us to put as many people along so that they can follow him. That is that we're saying in our churches, places of influence that God gives us. We know what we're saying. I work hard, I give all the time, and I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. So maybe it's time to decide what you offer. Maybe it's time to let go of something that we've been doing for a long time. Because that's just a model. It's not our mission. But truly live for God told us to do. Exactly that disciple church. Follow Christ. Matthew 28, 19, and 20, but let me ask some of you Bibles over this. We'll go in the name of the Father, everything man to this out. Make sure I have your hands. Here's what I know. He's not called to do anything. He's not equipped you to do. And he's not promised you. That's what God knows. Trust. Stand with the bush. And I want you to sit. Moses to have any ability is of that's what God's calling all of us. In your heart, you're listening. I think I might be involved in church plan. Pursue that. Get some coaching. Get some cover. Talk to the booty. Talk to pastor. The models that God has put you to do. Where He's not. Thank you so much. You equip us.